In this video, we're going to show you how to replace your car's drum brakes. It's super easy. Let's get to it. If your brake shoes are worn after 50 to 150,000 miles depending on how you drive, or your wheel cylinder leaks, for example, which happened in our case, you'll need to replace your drum brakes. We're going to show you how to replace all the hardware, all the springs, the guides, more springs, the automatic adjuster, the brake shoes, and the leaking wheel cylinder. It might look complicated at first, but it's actually really simple. And if you've done one drum brake, you can do them all. Doesn't matter if it's a small car or a big truck. The first thing you need to do is lift your car up and put it on jack stands. We lifted our Jeep on the rear differential and put jack stands under the rear axle. We've got a separate video on how to safely lift your car on jack stands, which we'll link to in the description under the video. So make sure to check it out. After taking the wheel off, always place it underneath your car for extra safety. You can't be too secure when working under a vehicle. With the wheel off, first disengage the emergency brake. Otherwise, you won't be able to get the drum off. That's because with the emergency brake engaged, the brake shoes are pushing outward against the drum, preventing you from ever pulling it off. Then the next step is to remove the drum itself. Sometimes these can be rusted stuck to the hub face, so you want to grab a block of wood and a mallet and hit it a few times to vibrate it loose. If you're reusing the drum itself, you don't want to hit it directly with your mallet because you can chip or crack it. But if you're replacing them anyway, just swing away. Then wiggle the drum loose and take it off. Grab a bucket or disposable oven tray and place it under the drum brake. Our drum brake is super greasy because our brake cylinder failed and started leaking loads of brake fluid. So we're first going to spray it down with brake cleaner to remove most of the gunk. Even if your drum brake isn't greasy, it's still going to be full of brake dust and you don't want to breathe that stuff in. So spray it down with brake cleaner to remove most of it. Take extra care when working on classic cars. In the old days, they even use asbestos in the brakes, so make sure you don't breathe that stuff in. When changing your brake shoes or wheel cylinder, it's best practice to always replace the hardware as well. That's because over time, the springs might lose their strength, or, in this case, the automatic adjuster cable broke. Normally, the cable for the automatic adjuster runs from the top, around the guide here, to the bottom where it attaches to the automatic adjuster. But as you can see, the cable broke. This is why you should always replace your hardware when working on the brakes, because something might be broken or the springs could have lost their strength. First, we got to remove the top springs and the cable guide, these springs, then the automatic adjuster so we can finally remove the brake shoes to get to the wheel cylinder, which is located back here. But before doing anything else, grab your phone and take some pictures of all the parts and how they're installed. This will make installing them a lot easier if you've never done it before. And before digging in, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps our channel a lot. Take some pliers and grab a hold of the hook at the end of the spring. Pull it sideways and up and over. You can buy specialized tools to make the removal of all the springs a bit easier, but we're going to show you how to do this without them. Sometimes the spring is a bit too strong to just pull it off with pliers alone, so in that case you want to grab your pliers and place one end against the hook and the other end on the opposite side of the pin it's connected to. Squeeze the hook until you can fit a flat screwdriver in there and then use the pin as a pivot point to lift the hook off. Then remove the springs and take off the automatic adjuster cable. We can just take it off because the cable broke and there's no tension on it, but normally you'll also need to lever it off with a screwdriver. And finally remove this retainer. But don't throw anything away yet. Parts like that retainer often need to be reused in the new drum brake. The next step is to remove the hold-down springs. You need to twist these 90 degrees so the pin can fit through. You can see the pin running to the back there, and if you look from behind, this is what you need to look for. You need to hold your finger on there while removing the spring so the pin stays in place. Then grab a vise grip and lock it on the spring cap. Push down hard while turning 90 degrees and the spring will pop right off when it's correctly lined up with the pin. Push the pin through and take it out. Now do the same for the other side. Hold the pin in place, lock the vise grips on the spring cap, push down, and turn 90 degrees until it pops off. You can also use a specialized tool for this, but in our experience, vise grips work just as well. Then pull the top side of the brake shoes apart and take it off. But look out for the park and brake link and how it was attached. Only one side has a spring. At this point, you won't be able to remove the brakes completely because the emergency brake will still be attached. You can either try to remove it from the cable by sliding it off here, or just remove it by unhooking the other side from the brake shoe itself. That little hook here slides into this slot on the brake shoe. Sometimes it might also be held in place with a round pin like this with a retainer clip, which you need to push out with some pliers. With the brakes removed, it's very easy to demonstrate how the automatic adjuster works. When the brakes get thinner and have to travel further, the adjuster cable pulls this lever up, which turns the automatic adjuster. This will then extend and push the bottom side outward a bit, which compensates for the thinner brake shoes. Then put the brake shoes closer together to remove tension from the spring. Grab a pair of pliers and remove it. This spring isn't as strong as the other two at the top, so you can just stretch it to remove it. With the bottom spring removed, you can pull the brake shoes apart and take the automatic adjuster off. Then grab a flat screwdriver and unhook the spring from the lever arm. Take the lever arm off and then remove the spring. Our brake shoes are coated in grease, which you can normally degrease to reuse them if you wanted to. But in our case, the brake lining itself is soaked in brake fluid because we had a leaking wheel cylinder, and that's a bigger problem. The brake fluid might compromise the integrity and safety of the brake lining and the adhesive material, so it's best not to take any risks and replace them. They're usually not that expensive. With everything removed, it's easy to see all the contact points where the brake shoes touch the backing plate. This is important to know because you need to grease those points when installing the new brake shoes. Then first clean the backing plate with degreaser to get the dirt, grime, and brake fluid off. Then use a metal wire brush to remove as much of the surface rust as possible. Now it's time to remove the wheel cylinder. Use a wrench to remove the two bolts mounting the wheel cylinder to the backing plate. Then grab an open-end wrench and loosen the brake line. If you feel it's pretty stuck, first spray it with some penetrating oil and use a brake line wrench to avoid stripping the fitting. With the brake line loose, you want to be quick because brake fluid will start to drip out. It's best to place some rags under it, but our brake fluid reservoir got drained by the leaking wheel cylinder, so there's no need for us to do that. Then remove the wheel cylinder and clean all the gunk and debris from the contact area before installing the new one. Remove the protective cap from the new wheel cylinder and put it in place. Then first connect the brake line to the new wheel cylinder so your brake line stops leaking, but don't fully tighten it yet. Put the bolts in hand tight before properly tightening them with a wrench. Finally, fully tighten the brake line, but be careful you don't put too much force on it. It's only a copper fitting, which is a lot softer than steel. With the new wheel cylinder in place, it's time to install the new brakes. Based on the pictures you took in the beginning, lay out the old and the new hardware next to each other. Before installing the new brakes, the first thing we like to do is compare the hardware that's on both the old and the new one. As you can see, there are two big differences. The first one is the automatic adjuster, which works by the adjuster cable pulling this lever up and turning the adjuster outward. We need to reuse the bracket, the spring, and the adjuster itself, and these need to be placed in between the brake shoes here. Then the second big difference is the park and brake link. This also wasn't included in the hardware set, which isn't an issue as it's only a solid metal bracket. The important part is the spring, which we do have in the new set. And then finally, always make extra sure to verify one last time if you have everything. We have the hold-down springs on both sides, the springs at the top. We have the wheel cylinder, which we already replaced and is mounted on the car already. We have the adjuster cable, the cable guide, and then the spring at the bottom. But make sure you don't forget to check for this small retainer at the top, which we need to reuse in the new set as well. We're going to gather all the parts from the old brakes that we're going to reuse so we can degrease them and remove the surface rust. A quick pass with a metal brush and some brake cleaner and we're good to go. And don't forget to degrease the emergency brake as well. When installing the brake shoes, you'll notice that there's one long and one short brake shoe. It's even more clear when you line up the bottom of the brake lining and then look at the top. It's a big difference. The big one goes towards the back of the vehicle and the smaller one towards the front. Most vehicles are set up that way. When handling the new brake shoes, be very careful not to get the brake lining greasy. So make sure you have clean hands or gloves and try to avoid touching them. Before installing the brake shoes on the car, try to install as much as possible on the brake shoes already, like the automatic adjuster spring and lever. You first need to install the spring and line it up so this hook points down. Then line the hole in the spring up with the pin and push the spring all the way over. Then verify if it's installed correctly by feeling if the spring pushes down. This will be used to hold the automatic adjuster lever in place. Push the automatic adjuster lever over the pin with the big hole and slide the smaller hole sideways over the notch in the pin. Then rotate it towards the bottom and lift the spring up and over the lever so it hooks behind it. Then check if it works correctly. If you push the lever up, it should get pulled down again by the spring. Before mounting the brake shoes, remember the contact points from earlier and apply some anti-seize. Only use a small amount. You don't want grease moving around in your brakes. Then take your brake shoes and remember, the big one points towards the back and the smaller one towards the front. This rectangular hole is for the emergency brake, which attaches to it with this hook, like so. And make sure to check for your specific setup where the wheel cylinder needs to be seated against the brake shoes. Ours needs to push onto this protruding part here. Next, take the pin from the hold-down spring, line the holes up, and push it through. Then place the hold-down spring on the pin, and with the spring cap locked in your vise grips, push and turn 90 degrees while holding the pin with your other hand like you did when removing it. With the hold-down spring properly in place, repeat the same process for the other side. Line it up, push through, put the spring on, and push and turn so the spring locks in place. The next step is to install the automatic adjuster. But before doing so, make sure to check if both sides are greased. If they aren't, like in our case, because we cleaned them, make sure to add a thin layer of anti-seize on the moving parts. This side looks good. Now we need to do the other side and it's good to go. A thin layer of anti-seize and it's perfect. Place the automatic adjuster in between the brake shoes and make sure you don't flip it around, otherwise it won't work. Then attach the spring holding the bottom side of the brake shoes together. Connect the automatic adjuster cable to the lever, making sure that the lever is between the spring and the cable plate. With everything at the bottom end in place, it's time to install the hardware at the top. Grab the park and brake strut and put the spring on. Install it in between the brake shoes and make sure it's not upside down or flipped around. Remember, the park and brake lever needs to be in between there alongside the brake shoe. Then install the shoe guide plate or retainer. Place the automatic adjuster cable guide in place with this raised edge and attach the spring, but don't connect it at the top yet. Then do the same for the other spring. You don't want to connect them yet because you first need to install the automatic adjuster cable. Make sure the cable goes over the guide and not behind the guide in between the brake shoe. Then pull the cable over the pin while pushing the automatic adjuster lever up at the same time to remove tension. Then make sure the cable is still following the correct path and everything is securely in place. Make some room for the two springs by pushing the retainer and the cable all the way back in place. To install the springs, which are pretty strong, you can buy special tools which we'll link to in the description below, but we'll show you how to do it with a screwdriver. Hook the spring over the screwdriver and use the pin at the top as a pivot point to pull the hook over. Once it's over, wiggle your screwdriver out, making sure the spring doesn't jump off. It's that easy. Now do the same for the other side. With the last spring connected, make sure everything is correctly lined up and in place. For the next steps, you'll need the drum. So if you're reusing it like us, first make sure it's clean and all dirt, grease, and rust is removed. This brown ridge came from the old brake pads, so we're going to quickly sand it down as the new ones don't have that gap. After smoothing out the surface and degreasing everything, we're good to go. The next step is to bleed the brakes. But first, you need to put the drum on there. That's because the brakes need to have something to push against. If you don't put the drum on there, the wheel cylinder will keep on going outward until it pops, and you don't want that to happen. But we have a separate video on how to bleed the brakes, which you can check out by clicking this pop-up or by going to the link in the description below. Now, we're going to keep it drum brake specific and show you how to adjust them. The first step is to mount the drum. If it doesn't fit or if it's really difficult, the automatic adjuster is extended too much. You want the brakes to slightly drag against the drum, so we're going to dial it in a bit. Now it fits over it, but the brake shoes are still touching the drum a little too hard. Let's dial it in a bit more and we should be good. The brakes are slightly dragging now, which is what you're looking for. The final thing you might want to adjust, if needed, is the emergency brake. That's the drum, and you want to look for a thick cable like this one that runs towards the front of the vehicle and joins a second cable in an adjuster which runs towards the emergency brake lever itself. To adjust it, you only need to adjust this nut, which will increase or decrease the tension on the cable. So if you need to pull your emergency brake really high and it has a lot of excess travel, you might want to tighten it here. Then before installing the drum, remove the rust from the hub face with a metal brush. Degrease it and put a very thin layer of anti-seize on there so the drum doesn't stick the next time you're doing brakes. But don't exaggerate, you don't want the grease to sling towards the brakes. That's all there is to it. Now you know how to replace drum brakes. Thanks for watching. More videos are on the way, so be sure to like, comment, and share this video. It really helps us out a lot. Our content wouldn't be possible without the amazing support of our patrons and YouTube channel members, whose crew you can join via the links in the description to see our schedule, vote on future videos, get behind-the-scenes sneak peeks, and much more. This is Classic Car Maintenance, and we'll see you on the next one.